Hello Muleys, in this example we will be seeing how to use until successful scope and how wisely we can use, like what are the tricks and tips we have to use. I will show you in this video. Before that, I wanted to let you know that I have deployed a small system API which will create some errors. For example, if I go in the Postman and let me show you something. So this is the system API, like whatever status code I pass in the query parameters. For example, if I send this, you can see like there is a successful response, and if you give 400 and it will give like status code as 400 and you will get the error response, something like this. So whatever status code you send, for example 403, it will give that particular status code here and the corresponding failure message. This is just to show you like how to use until successful for, especially when you are calling a web service, and whether we have to use until successful for 400 series scenarios or how to overcome this issue, we'll be watching in this video. Okay, before going to until successful, there is a common question that I keep getting from folks asking about how to get the same. For example, you have seen previously, like when you are calling a system API directly through Postman, you will see a proper response over here, right? This is the structured or customized response. But in case we are calling from another API, like from process API or experience API, how to fetch this customized error message from system API to process API or from process to experience. So it's very simple. If you debug the application, you will get to know. See, I have an application already up and running here. So here you can see I am using HTTP requester to call my system API. Okay, so here also I am just using the query parameters to pass, so that it will recreate the error. For example, 400 I am sending the 400 status code. So if I send here, so here if I see here, I will go next, it will create an error. Okay, you can see my error type is bad request over here, and if I resume, I won't be finding any kind of error, or you won't be finding the description. If I send again, you won't be finding that particular error message, proper error message anywhere over here, but you can see it will always be present somewhere here around mule message. Okay, can you see here mule message? Within mule message there is something called typed value, and within typed value you can see there is a value. This is where you can find. But again, if you click on x plus y, if you type error evaluate, so debugging is always helpful. Okay, here when you find here, you won't be seeing that customized error message, but what you can do, you can just see here mule message, right? Error dot mule message, right? Evaluate it. You here also again you won't be seeing anything, but you can see something like typed value. But instead, if you do dot payload, you can see your customized error message. So this is the exact syntax. If you want to get the exact customized error response that is coming from the system API or process API, and if you want to propagate that particular error, so you have to use this syntax, error dot mule message dot payload. It is very important and a very tricky one. Even if you are using dot payload, you can see like when I evaluate error dot mule message, I won't be seeing any payload here, right? So you can use dot payload, or you can use again dot typed value, evaluate it. You can still, so error dot mule message dot typed value is correct, or error dot mule message dot payload is also correct. So this is how you can propagate the error response. Now coming back to our scenario, I will resume this, and usually until successful is used not only just, again, most of the freshers who are new to MuleSoft, they always think that until successful is only for HTTP requester. No, until success, if you, it is a scope. Okay, scope cannot be limited to one connector. Whenever I say scope, if you right click and show, like if you go to wrap-in, whatever you see here, everything is a scope. So you can see until successful, you can wrap a transform message under until successful. Even if there is a like data view error, if you are using like until successful, it will retry. But in real time scenario, we should not be retrying, because if data view error, once it is an error, it is always an error, right? Even if you are retrying for 2 times, 3 times or 100 times, it is always the same. Okay, that will be applicable. So let me delete it. So usually we use until successful error whenever we are connecting to external systems, or when external systems includes web services like RESTful or SOAP services, or database or Salesforce, any connectivity related issues, we will be using until successful. Why we are using? Because sometimes, for example, there is a web service which you are calling a RESTful service, or you can say like from experience API you are calling your process API. So process API might be down for a few seconds. So instead of just propagating the error back, we can give it a chance like to retry for couple more of times, so that sometimes this process API, whatever we are trying to call, if it is down for very like 2 seconds or 3 seconds, so if we are retrying, like if we use until successful and give the retries as like 2 retries or 3 retries for every like 10 seconds, so whenever the process API is up and running, it will connect back again and we will continue the process. So that is the reason, one of the reasons why we use until successful. Again, most of them, what they do is they just right click on until successful, like on the HTTP connector, and wrap in until successful, simply like this, and go ahead and they will max retries they will give. For example, we are retrying for 3 by default. So one more important point, what is this parameter? Milliseconds between retries. It's not for all retries, between retries. There is a small documentation, so documentation is always helpful, guys. If you see here, you should understand this paragraph very clearly. Specifies in milliseconds, yes, the minimum interval between 2 retries. Now the another important point is this one. The actual interval depends upon the previous execution, but it should not exceed twice this number. Okay, so this point is very important whenever you are whenever some testers are testing, right? They will think like if you are giving interval as maximum retries as 3, and if you are keeping like 60,000 milliseconds, for example, if I want to have 10 seconds in milliseconds, right, which is like this one. Now I will use this, like for every interval I will be using 10 seconds as the gap. So but it will not always be 10 seconds. So this is the actual logic behind it. Okay, now coming back to our code. So what I have done, I am going to retry in case of failures. So again I am saying like until successful is not status dependent, it is only error dependent. When I say error dependent, it can be a data view error, it can be a bad request, it can be a connectivity issue. For any issue, when an error object is created, then this until successful will retry irrespective of status code. We will see that in our first call. So now you can see I have wrapped my HTTP requester within until successful. All right, so first I will make a successful call just to show you that it will not retry for successful things. So for that I am calling like status code as 200, next. I am receiving a success response here because it is a 200 status code. This is just a dummy API that I created so that I can try myself. So most of them say that I didn't get a chance to check. So it's always better to think something beyond and try to recreate the error scenarios. Now I don't have any problem. It is always a successful transaction and 200, right? So now next thing what I will do is 400 scenario, which means bad request. I am trying to recreate a bad request error. Suppose this is, you consider whatever application I am having is a experience API, then I am calling some system API, process API. So now you can see I am getting a 400 bad request. You can see the error type as bad request. Now as you are getting an error irrespective of status code, as you are having an error, if you see here in the console, you can check. So first time is gone. Okay, attempt 1 of 3. So if you mention the retries as 3, in total it will run 4 times. One is the original request and the other 3 times are the retries. So you can see after 10 minutes again I am trying to retry second time, right? Again it is a bad request. Third time, it will be a bad request again. No matter what, how many times you retry, it will always be the, so total, in total 4, because in total it will be like these are the retry attempts, and for the very first time we have tried once, right? So it's total 4. So now it will come out of this until successful. You can see it has attempted 3 retries, okay, and it is, even if you are keeping 100 as the maximum retries for 400 scenarios, it is always a bad request. So what is the point of using until successful for business errors? So 400, 401, 403 are business errors. 400 bad request. Once it is a bad request, it is always a bad request. You are not going in the middle of the flow and changing something, isn't it? So it doesn't make sense if you are retrying until using until successful for 3 times or 5 times or 100 times, even if it is for like, even if it is like 100 maximum retries, it is always a bad request. So it is not a correct option. So how to overcome this? Is this something we have to do the configuration from until successful? No. As I said, until successful is a scope, so it is not a connected dependent, it is error dependent. So whatever you keep inside transfer message, like you can keep a transfer message here or anything, right? So what you have to do, you need to do something within HTTP requester, okay? That is very important. HTTP requester, in response tab you will have a response tab. There is an option called response validator. So this is very important. So if you go here, you should click success status code validator, okay? This is the option you can check, and say like 200, define 200 dot 499, 200 dot 499. What does this mean? So I will save it so that it will start running the project. But what does this mean? So what I am trying to say to HTTP requester is, whatever status code that you are receiving, for example, I had this status code, isn't it? Even if it is 403, usually this is an error. But what I am trying to say to this HTTP requester is, whatever status code is coming between 200 to 499, please consider it as a success. Then I will do whatever I want. I have the logic, because when I consider this status codes as success, then it will not create an error object, so it will not retry for 200 to 499 scenarios. That's the logic here. That's how we can skip calling the multiple retry calls for 200 to 499 status, right? If you see here, my application is deployed. I will show you. I will go back to my code. So now 400 scenario I am retrying again, sending the request. This time it will not create an error, because we are saying like to 400 is the success status code. So if I go next, you can see immediately it is not raising any error. Rather, you can see your actual payload is now whatever error message we are receiving, okay? So in this way, again you can see something is happening over here. What is that? You are getting the error response, but you can see your status code is always 200, because you just considered that it is a 200 to 499, whatever it is there, it is success. That's how you have defined. But in real case, this is the failure message, but you are getting a success response, so it's wrong. So how to handle that error? Before seeing how to handle that error, I will try couple more things. 499, you can see I will resume. It will see 200, okay, but here you can see 499. So now what we have to do, one more small logic we need to implement. That is, okay, before implementing that logic, we have to test something 500 scenario, right? Like connectivity issue. So what I will do is, usually it is 200. I'll send the request, okay? I am able to connect this because my application is up and running and I am getting a successful transaction. What I will do is, I will go to my runtime manager, go to settings, and I will stop my application for a while. so that I am trying to recreate a error scenario. Okay, connectivity error. Now my application is stopped. So now when I send my request here, so the total there are 3 retries. What I will try to do is I will retry for 2 times here. Next, it will try to connect to the API. You can see you are getting a timeout issue. This is the common issue, like for 500 scenario errors. It's not a 400 error or 400, status code is not 400. If you see here, attributes dot status code, it is not showing any status codes, so it is not between 200 to 499. So now what I will do, so now you can see it is not between 400 errors, like 400 to 499. That's why it is giving an error. So next what I will do is, while the application is, my local application is running, I will start the application so that it will be up again. Okay, this is how you should recreate your own scenarios. If you want, if you have any doubts, don't feel that you are not able to figure it out. Just try to recreate some scenarios by yourselves. It's very easy. You have a free Anypoint platform account. If your platform account is expired, I always told, like, you can use a different username with the same email ID to create a new trial account, right? So you can see I'm just waiting before. So I'll request for the next time. Okay, still it will, because it is not up here, it will again give timeout issue. But for the third retry, I will wait for some time. So here you can see, right? So attempt 1 of 3. So I will wait for this application to get deployed. It will take a bit of time, but let's wait. So meanwhile this application is getting deployed, I wanted to reiterate what I have said. So response status code validator, why we are using this 200 to 499 is, you will consider, because retrying for 400 status codes is not a correct thing, because even if you are retrying, for example, you have resource not found 404 or anything not found, so even if you are retrying for 100 times, it is always not found, right? Because you won't change anything in the middle of the execution. So we should not ideally retry. It is a time waste. You can retry, but it is a time waste. And just to give that to the client saying that it is a bad request, you will take like 1 or 2 minutes to give the response. So it is all not correct to retry for this scenario. For that, what we are doing is 200 to 499 we are considering as success status code validator, so that this will not raise an error, rather it considers even 400 scenario errors, it will consider as a successful and move back. And now we are trying to recreate this connectivity error. I'm just waiting for this applications to start. You can see my application is started, and now I am in retry mode. So now when I go next, you can see now for the second retry attempt or the first retry attempt, you are able to, so my application is up and running, right? And I am resuming. So it is successful. So this is one of the use cases why we are using until successful. Until successful is basically used if at all some web services or some external systems, when they are down, you will give it one more chance to, like, there are chances that it will be up and running within few seconds. In this case we have seen this. Now again there was a different scenario, right? Like 400 scenario I have said, like if I go here, next, it will consider as a success and come back to transfer message. Here it gives a error message, but status code is not 200, it should be 400. So what we have to do, some small logic you have to implement over here, which is have a choice router, drag and drop here. You can mention in when condition, if 200 dot dot 299 means whatever is coming from 200 to, sorry, this is not dot dot, 200 to 299 means all 200 status. If this array of 200 to 299 contains attributes dot status code, Okay, if, what does this mean? For example, if you don't know this logic, go to dwlang fun, just try it out. For example, where a equal to 203, some status codes. So what is, first of all, what is this 200 to 299? This is like array of 200 scenarios, right? And contains a, true, because it is containing within this status code. If it is like 404, it is false. So what I'm trying to do here is, if 200 to 299 contains the status code is coming from your HTTP requester, right? Attributes that status code, then consider as success. So go here, all right. Or even, what is the better option is, you can move here. The other better option is, instead of having a choice router, I will delete this. In transform message, what I can keep is application/json payload, okay, and then I will add one more variable which is called was, or let me, I think it will be confusing, let me keep choice router itself, the same condition, like when, so I can just copy this 200 to contains, instead of a, vars dot status, sorry, attributes dot status code, and I'll go here, keep a transform message, set the payload like whatever is coming from there. But I am unsure about how the error response looks like. Okay, so first I will make sure that 200 to 299 goes here, but I don't know what is there in 400 scenario error. For that I will use the same debugger mode and see what is the actual syntax that I can use here. Okay, my application is started. First I will run for 200, send it. I wanted to show you something here. So next, this is 200 scenario, so you are getting payload as, you know, successful, and attributes dot status code is 200, so it should go into the first choice router and complete the transaction, and you can see everything is fine. But what about 400 scenario now? 400, I'm not sure what is the payload, so I am just debugging and check, and then I will write my code. So next, you can observe one more thing here. Though it is considering as a success response, the payload is coming as the error message, still the status code will always be a proper one. Here you can see the status code is 400, though you are giving 200 to 499 as you know, a success status code, but still the attributes that is coming, you are calling your external API. These attributes are the attributes of those of that API. That's the reason you can still see the status code is 400. So now it will not go to 400, so it will actually go to the default, and then it will resume. So now that I want to see the payload as well, isn't it? So I will run it. Next. Okay, you can see payload is just the payload, so I'll go next. So I can keep now my transform message here. I can set the value like application JSON. I can keep payload, and I can add, now I have to add a variable called HTTP status. Okay, why HTTP status? I will show you. It's attributes dot status code. Okay, I will save it. Why HTTP status? Vars dot HTTP status, because my HTTP listener responses, it is set to error, like status code is set to vars HTTP dot status. So I will save it. So my application is saved. Now I will run the application. So it's next, 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 next. It will come to default because it's 400 scenario. Next, and resume it. Now your application is working as expected. Here you are getting 400 status code and you are getting the proper response. So this is how you have to use until successful very wisely. You should not be using, you know, for 400 scenarios also you should not be retrying. It is just that it's just waste of time and it doesn't make sense to retry. Okay, in normal again database queries and all, there is no way that you can have this option for status codes. Okay, so in that case we cannot do anything, but at least in calling web service this is the scenario. Again, if you feel this is a big choice router is a big thing, you can actually remove the choice router here and transfer message, because whatever payload is coming here, the same payload. Only thing is you can add variable http status and click on OK, and attributes dot status code. So this is the another thing. So we have learned two things in this video. One is how to propagate the error. In the initial starting point itself I have shown you how to propagate the error, like from system API to this. It is nothing but error.mulemessage.payload or error.mulemessage.typed value. Both will give the propagated error response. And the second one is how to use until successful. Now you can see I can just resume directly and you can see 400 bad request, and if I use like 429, if I send the request, you can see 499 status code, too many requests, and for 200 I'll send the request, I will be getting the success response. Okay, 500 scenario we have already seen by, you know, stopping the application, and we have seen, right? So this is how it works. Hope you like this video and just try things from your side as well by doing some proof of concepts. Thank you.